Hello and welcome to Zip Code Magic. My name's Jeff, I'm glad you're here. Let's just jump right in. By the end of this video, you'll be able to type a zip code into a cell, and Excel will just populate the city and state like magic. It's pretty cool. And I'm going to show you 3 ways to do this. We'll use the Copilot function, we'll use Power Query, and we'll use some traditional functions as well, just in case you don't have access to the Copilot function. So let's head to the first method using the Copilot function. Let's go to the first exercise, exercise 1. There's this free online service that lets you return information about a given zip code. And you can open this up in any browser. When you do, it looks like this. It returns the country, primary city, longitude, latitude, and the state. But rather than going to the web browser and copying and pasting the pieces you want, we can pull this right into Excel with the web service function. So in Excel, you just go equals web service. And I could type the URL enclosed in quotes, but since it's here in B6, we'll just use B6 as our function argument. Close function and enter. And you can see the data is returned right into our Excel workbook. Now let's improve this by allowing the user to type any zip code into a cell. Let's go to the next exercise, exercise 2. So here we want to allow the user to type a zip code into this cell. Once again, we'll use the web service function. This time, I'm going to paste in the base URL, close quote, join it with the ampersand to the zip code stored here in C6. Close the web service function and enter. Now let's see what happens when we update the zip code. Okay, this works. Now let's improve this by pulling out the state and the primary city from this returned string. There are a couple different ways to do this. In this video, we're going to use the Copilot function. Equals Copilot. Here, let's start our prompt. We'll say get the state abbreviation, comma, and then we provide it the context. The context is the value here in C8. Close the function and enter. And here we can see it returns the state abbreviation. And let's use the Copilot function, once again, to get the place name. And the context is the value here in C8. Close function and enter. Okay, and now we see it returns the primary city. Now let's change the zip and make sure it works. 90001, enter. Okay, that looks good. Now let's see if we can clean this up even more in the next exercise, exercise 3. So here, the user is going to type their zip code into C8, equals Copilot. And here the prompt is get the state abbreviation. And what's the context? Well, in this case, we're going to use the web service function. And the URL is going to be our base URL, close quote, and join it to the zip here in C8. Close the web service function, close the Copilot function, and enter. And that's looking pretty good. Now let me just cruise up here. Let me copy this whole function. Let me paste. And what we're going to do is say get the place name. Enter. And that's looking pretty good. So now let's test this out. 90001, enter. Okay, that looks good. But what if the zip code has a leading 0? Well, let's try it out. How about 01101? Enter. Okay, and here we're getting some errors. And the reason here is this data type. C8 is storing this as a number. And when it's stored as a number, Excel removes the leading 0. No worries. What we can do is store this as a text string instead. The way that we do that is let's open the Format Cells dialog, select text, and click OK. Now let's type in 01101, enter. And now we can see that's working as expected. Now the user can type a zip code into a cell and the city and state just like appear. Pretty cool. Now let's use Power Query. Data from web. In the resulting from web dialog, we just paste the URL and we'll retrieve the results for this zip code. Click OK. And since this is a free public API, we can just click Connect. And this opens the Power Query editor. And what we can see is we have country, country abbreviation, postcode, and then we have places in the format of a list. So we click this list, and then we click Record. And this reveals the data that we're after. So what we can do is just click Home, Close and Load To, and we want to send the results into a table in an existing worksheet right here and click OK. And now we see the results right in Excel. What would really be nice is if we could make this more dynamic so that we could give it any zip code and have it return those results, rather than passing the zip code as part of the URL. So let's go to the next exercise, exercise 2. Let's say we wanted to get the data for all of these zip codes. So let's first of all get this table into Power Query. We can do that by going to Data, from Table Range. This once again opens the Power Query editor. Now first of all, Power Query automatically changed the data type for these columns, and we don't want that because you can see as a number it removes the leading zeros. So I'm going to delete that, and I'm actually going to change this into a text data type. Okay, much better. Now let's go to Add Column, and let's use Invoke Custom Function. What this lets us do is call another function query. Currently, we don't have any function queries in the workbook. But no problem, we can just repurpose the existing query from exercise 1. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next exercise, exercise 3. So we have the query from the first exercise. And what we basically need to do is set it up so that this zip code is an argument or function parameter, and then to return these results. So the way that we can do that is we're just going to edit this query. Right click and edit. And then we go to View, Advanced Editor. Now, all we really need to do is set up the function signature, meaning what is the function argument or parameter that we're going to pass? Well, we're going to pass in an argument that we're going to call zip code, and it's going to be a text. And then we want the function to return a record. And then what we need to do is replace this hard-coded zip code and use the concatenation operator, the ampersand, to join in our zip code argument. And then we can click Done. And now we can see this has been converted into a function, which means we can enter that zip code parameter and get the results. Let me go ahead and give this function a better name. I'm going to call it fn zip lookup. Now let's go back to our zip code list. So once again, we go from table range. We want these zip codes to be in a text data type, so we retain this leading 0. So I'm going to delete the automatic change type step. And I'm actually going to change this to a text. Now we can go to Add Column, Invoke Custom Function. We're going to give our new column a name. I'm going to call it Zip Data. And the function query is our fn zip lookup function. And for the zip code argument, we can give it a text or a column name. We're going to give it a column name. Which column? The zip column. And we're going to click OK. And now we get this alert about data privacy. So let's click Continue. And we're going to say Ignore privacy levels. Save. And now we have this zip data column with the records. So we can click on one of them and we can get a preview. And here's another preview. So it looks like it's working. So to send this into Excel, what we're going to do is we're going to expand, and we can pick and choose which columns we want to return to Excel. For now, we'll just use all of them, and I'll click OK. And here it looks like they worked. So now what we can do is Home, close and load to, and we're going to send it to an existing worksheet, exercise 3, click a cell, and OK. And let's head over to exercise 3, and it looks like it worked. Let me close the Queries and Connections panel, and now we've got it. Now the nice thing is that once this is set up, we can just go back to our data source, and what if we add a new record like T011, and the transaction amount was $100, and it was from 90001. Now let's go refresh our results table. We don't even need to open the Power Query editor here. We can just go to our results table, right-click, and refresh. And here it comes in. Now that API does have rate limits, and so in small batches we should be good. But if your zip code list starts to have 100, 1,000, 10,000 rows, then you might encounter those rate limits. But for small batches like this, it works awesome. Now let's use some traditional functions. Here we just go equals web service, and we could type in a URL enclosed in quotes, or we can just point it to the cell value in B6, close function, and enter. And as you can see, this returns the same thing that our web browser returned. But what if we wanted to let the user type in the zip code in a cell? Well, that takes us to the next exercise, exercise 2. Here we want to allow the user to type in a zip code in C6, and then we want to use the web service function to do the zip code lookup. Equals web service. Now in quotes, and I paste the URL, close quote, and then I'm going to join that with the ampersand to the value here in C6. Close function, enter. Okay. Now the user can type in any zip code here. 90007 returns Los Angeles, 90620 returns Buena Park, and so on. Now, let's say we want to extract the state and the primary city. Okay, there's several different ways we could go about this. Now, if I scroll over to the right, what we notice is the state abbreviation is always the last value. So one way to do it is we could just start at the end and go back until we get to the state abbreviation. And that's what we'll do here. So the way that we do that is we use the mid function. And the mid function just means we want to grab some characters out of the middle of this text string. So what is the text string? Well, it's the value returned by the web service function here in C8, comma. And what's the starting position that we want to begin our extraction? Let's start by calculating the length of it. In other words, how many characters there are. We'll use the length function to do that. And again, we'll get the length of C8. And then we know we have to back it up a little bit. I think there was like a closing paren, a curly brace, maybe another closing paren. So we'll just guess and we'll say -3, comma. And then how many characters do we want to retrieve? We want to get 2. So we close function and enter. Okay, and I didn't back it up far enough. So let's go with -4, enter. Okay, not far enough. Let's go -5 and enter. Okay, and there we got it. And let's put in another zip code just to make sure it works. How about 10008? Okay, and we get New York. Perfect. Now, let's talk about how to pull out this primary city. Rather than rely on counting the exact number of characters, let's just look for the label place name because we know it's going to be right after that. So what we can do is we can use the search function. And we can say, go find place name. I could type that in quotes, or I could just use the value in the cell to the left, which is the same thing, place name. Comma, within text. Okay, so that just means within the value in C8. Close function and enter. So this is saying that the label place name starts at the 95th character. So I actually don't want to start my extraction there. I need to bump it to the right a little bit. How many? I don't know. We'll take a guess that it's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe 14. So we'll take 95 and then we'll add a little offset of, we'll call it 14, and we'll adjust that if needed. Okay. And now we need to know when to stop that extraction. So let's just look for the word longitude and then we'll back that up a little bit. So once again, I'll use the search function to go find, and I could type in longitude enclosed in quotes, but since I have it here in B12, I'll just use that. Within text, that's C8, and close function and enter. So it's saying it found the word longitude at the 126th position. We actually want to back that up a little bit. I don't know exactly how much, but we'll just for now subtract, call it 3, and we'll see how close we get. Okay, so now we have the starting and we have the ending. So let's figure out the primary city. Once again, we'll use the mid function. And the text is the text here in C8, and the starting position is here in D11, comma, and the number of characters is the difference between our starting and ending position. So that's simply going to be the value in D12 minus the value in D11. Close function and enter. Okay, we got pretty close actually. I think we just need to subtract one additional value. So instead of backing it up 3, we'll back it up 4. Okay, and we got it. And let's test it out. 90620. And that looks like it's working well. Now, instead of having all these helper cells, let's combine all this logic into a single formula in the next exercise, exercise 3. Okay, so here we have our entry form. We're going to enter the name, address, and zip, and we want to automatically populate the city and state. So for now, let's use the web service function. I'm going to paste in the URL, close quote, join it with an ampersand to whatever the user typed in C8. Close function and enter. Okay, this is looking good. Okay, let's do the city. Now we're going to use the same logic we used before, but we're going to combine it into a single formula. My favorite way to do that is by using the let function, equals let. Now the let function allows us to define names that we can reuse in subsequent function arguments. Then the scope of those names are just within this function. So here's how it works. We're going to name API, and we're going to set that equal to whatever is returned in B12. Shortly, we're going to put that web service function in here, but for now, we'll just get started with this, comma. Now the next name is going to be called place start, and it is going to be equal to, and we'll use the same technique we used before. we're going to use the search function to find the label place name. We're going to look for it in API. Close function, and then we need to bump it to the right a little bit. I think it was about 14, comma, and then we'll define the name place end. And once again, we'll use the search function to find the word longitude. And we're going to look for it within API. Close function, and then we needed to subtract, I think it was 4 or 5. We'll make any adjustments later. And then we'll define the word place length. And that is going to be equal to place end minus place start, comma. And then we're going to define the name place. And it is equal to, and once again, we'll use the mid function to look in API to start at place start for the number of characters of place length. Close the mid function and comma. And now what do we want to return? We want to return place. Close function and enter. Okay, and it worked. And let's use another zip code, 10007. Okay, looking good. And now for the state, equals. Once again, we'll use the let function. And API is going to be equal to this, comma, and we're going to call this state. And once again, we'll use the mid function, and we're going to look in the text API. We're going to start at, and once again, it was the length of API minus maybe 5. We'll fine tune that if we need to. Comma, for the number of characters of 2. Close the function, comma, and what do we want to return? We want to return state. Close function and enter. Okay, and we got it. Now, let's get this web service function out of here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy all of this, and we're going to cruise over here, and we're going to edit B12. And instead of looking at B12, we're going to paste and enter. Looks good. And we'll do the same thing with our state formula. Just replace B12 with a paste and enter. And now we don't need this. Okay, awesome. So now we're cruising down here, we're filling out our little customer form here, and we have a zip like 90620, enter, and we get the primary city and the state. Okay, and let's test it out with another zip code. How about 01101, enter. Okay, and now we get some errors, and why is that? Well, if we look at this, Excel is converting this number with the leading 0, and it's removing the leading 0. So all we need to do to fix this is convert this to text. And the way that we'll do that is we'll open up the Format Cells dialog, and we'll select text, and click OK. And now let's type it in again, 01101, enter. Okay, and now we got it. So that's how we can use the web service function to basically do a zip code lookup. However, the lookup database is not stored in our Excel file, it's stored online. And that's pretty cool if you ask me. So this was 3 ways to look up the city and state for a given zip code. Hopefully this has been helpful. Thanks so much. Have a great day. Hey Excel user, if you ever need to create summary reports, check out my Pivot Table for Beginners video. It starts at the beginning and shows how to store the data transactions in a table and then how to summarize those transactions with a pivot table report. I hope it helps unlock the incredible power of pivot tables.
This video is a production of Excel University.